All right, good evening, everyone. Apologies for coming in late. I had issues with network, so as not to waste our time, I'm just going to go straight into our lessons for today, and then continue. All right, let me try to share my screen. Can you all hear me? Please, if you can hear me, let me know. Can you let me know in the comment section if you can hear me? I want to be sure you can all hear me. All right, thank you. So let me try and share my screen so that we can get straight to our lessons for today. All right. So last previous class we talked about CSS. I got to introduce you guys to CSS, and we talked about inline CSS, internal CSS, and then external CSS. How that we have the inline CSS, which are written in your HTML elements. Then we have the internal CSS, which are written inside the same file with your HTML at the top inside of the title element. Okay. Then we have the external CSS. The external CSS is a different file from the HTML. And like I said, HTML file extension is .html. For CSS, it is always .css. So your file name .css. So today we are going to be moving forward, and we're going to be very fast about it. So I also talked about comments. I talked about colors. I talked about backgrounds. Okay? I think we stopped at colors. Yes. So colors, we stopped at. So let's move on to CSS backgrounds. CSS backgrounds. Okay. Can you see my screen? Please let me know if you can see my screen. Let me try and zoom. So CSS background. The CSS background property I used to add background effects for elements. So we are going to be talking about background color, background image, background repeats, background attachments, background position. Okay. And then in CSS, there's what we call shorthand property. In CSS, like I said, we have property, we have value. All right. Then we have declaration. So the declaration is the compendium of both your property and your value. All right. So now in CSS, we have what we call the shorthand property. That is your background color, background image, background, wherever, everything, you write them together under just background. Okay. So that's a shorthand property. Now the CSS background color. Let's start from the CSS background color. So the background color properties as the specify the background color of an element, just like we have right here. Look at this background color of this page here. I can decide to change it to, let's say I change it to yellow now. So you see that it's changed to yellow. So we use this background color. then we give it a declaration yellow. All right. So with CSS, a color is most often by a value color name like red. I think we've done colors now. ATX values, then we have the RGB value. So we have other, you can set background color for HTML elements also. Yes, you can set background color for an HTML element. Not if you don't want like just a particular element and not the entire background of the whole web page, wherever. You can set a background color for them too. Okay, so you just select the element you want to style, and then you give it background color. Then the color of the color you want to give that particular element, then you declare it with your value, and then you get your results. All right, so that's it. We have opacity or transparency. The opacity property specifies the opacity transparency of an element. It can take a value from 0.0 to 1.0. So the lower value, the more transparent. The lower the value, the more transparent it's going to become. So look at this. We have background color green, then opacity. Let me change this to background color red. Red. So what happened here is this is CSS. All right. Then we have our HTML codes down here. Okay. So this div first, div second, div third means we have 3 divs. Okay. Yeah, we gave them we gave each of the divs a class name. The first one class first, the second one class second, the third one class third. Okay. Sorry. Then we have the last div with out. Okay. Yeah. So now we selected each divs. There's CSS selector by class. I think I've talked about it in our previous classes also. You can always go back to it. The CSS selector by class, the CSS selector by ID, CSS selector by elements, just selecting each element and the likes. Now, this is div.first. I can just decide to just type dots first anyhow I want. So we have the div background color. The div now is going to pick every other div. Now the reason why we now wrote div dots first is because we already have a div here and we've declared a property and a value to it. Okay. So now we want to declare, we want to assign a value for the first class. So say div dot first, opacity 0.1. That's why it's very like very transparent. Down to this, which is 0.6. That's why it's a bit non-transparent. Then we have the default. We have the defaults, which is the major background color that we give to it. I can decide, let me decide to change the background color to red so that you see that, you see what we're talking about. So now I changed the background color to red. Are you with me, guys? So I changed the background color to red. Let me change this opacity now. I can decide to change it to 0. Hold on, 0.2. Then I have this. You see that it's coming up, and I can decide to just put this on 0.4 and get this at 0.5. Then let me put this at 0.3, and then we have this. Okay, let me reduce this to 0.2. 0.2. Then put this at 0.7. Can you see that? So that is that for opacity or transparency. Okay. You can also use the RGBA for your transparency. As you declare the RGB value, then your alpha 0.3 for your transparency, or 0 point anything, which where 1.0 means non-transparent. That means it's not going to be transparent. Okay. So so that's that. Let's move on to background image. How do you bring in an image on the background using CSS? All right, so let's get into it. Now, the background image property is written this way: background, then image. So it specifies an image to use as a background of an element. By default, the image is repeated, so it covers the entire element. So look at this. We have this background image here, URL. So it's always written like this: background, then URL in brackets, then you bring in the five parts. That is, well, let's say on your project, the image is under img folder, so just say folder slash then the image you want to use. So always remember that five parts is very, very important in CSS, likewise HTML. Okay, in programming generally, it's very important. So now you should note this: whenever you are using a background image, make sure you use an image that does not disturb the text, an image that does not disturb the text, so that when you now get to use the image, people will not be able to read the text like very well. No, don't do that. Make sure that the image you're using is not disturbing whatever text you have. So that is, you can also put in each element. You can also apply background image for each element too. Yes, it's possible. You just select the element you want to style, then you give a background image, then you bring in your image. Okay, it's that simple, very simple as ABC. Then we have the background repeats. So we have the background repeats. So by default, the background image property repeats an image both horizontally and vertically. Some images should be repeated only horizontally or vertically, or they will look strange. Look at this. As an image that's, so this is where, in cases like this, is where the background repeat comes in. So if I say, okay, if the image above is repeated only horizontally, so background repeats X, that means the background will look better. So it was, look at it now, it was repeating itself horizontally. So we don't want it to do that. We don't want to repeat itself horizontally anymore. So we use the background repeats. So we use the background repeats, then repeat X. Okay. So that's how we're able to get this. All right. It's that simple. If it's vertically, repeat Y. Okay. It's that simple. So we have CSS background repeats, no repeats. I can decide to, let me zoom this out. You can see this background image here. This background image where we have a tree and a bed on the tree. I can decide to remove this background repeats, no repeats. This one is not repeats, X is not repeats, Y. This one is no repeats declaration. Okay. You see that it kept repeating itself. It kept repeating itself. It kept, so we do not want it to repeat itself at all. So what I do is I declare background repeat, no repeat. So the value is no repeat. And if I run it now, it's not going to repeat the image anymore. All right. So it's that simple as ABC. Now we have the background position. How do you want your background image to be positioned? Okay. So after bringing in the background image, background repeats, then you bring in background position, right stop, margin right 200 px. I can decide, let me change it to left. So left stop. You see that it changed the position. Right. Then let me use the right right bottom. So that's the essence of using the background position. And whenever using the background position, always determine your margin. Margin, if it's background position right top, determine your margin right or margin left if it's for the left. Okay. So we have the background attachment. Background attachment. Are you still with me, guys? Okay. Michael Morgan, please, what does div mean? I've done this in HTML class now, but okay, let me just briefly explain, just for like a few minutes. A div, okay, is like more like a division. Okay, you are dividing your sections into different parts, where you have the nav. Let's say inside the navigation bar, you have different sections. You have logo, you have buttons, you have search icon, so all those. So you begin to group them using the div elements. All right, using the div element. Or let's say you're working on a dashboard, and on the dashboard you have yeah, sorry, on the dashboard you have let me show you an example. This is a client spread. I'm not supposed to be showing you. Okay, I'm not supposed to be showing you this, but notwithstanding, just hold on for a bit. So look at this dashboard here. As you can see, we have this entire section here. This entire section here that covers these three section. So all these three are in one div. Then inside that one div, we now have these particular sections in each div now. Inside that one div, which is we have grouped this away from this now. So while we grouped these three, inside that div now, because inside the div there can be divs also inside div. So we'll now put this whole box here, this whole box here in a div, this one too in a div, this one in a div, position it, and that is the essence of a div. That is what a div is used for. Okay, is used to group each element, is used to group your elements so as to not have your codes being jam-packed and disorganized and making it look so disorganized. It help you organize your codes and also help you group your codes in a very organized manner. I hope I was able to explain better. But you can always go back to the HTML class videos and you get what I'm saying. So we have the CSS background attachment, which specifies whether the background image should be scroll or fixed. That is when you are scrolling through a page, do you want the image, background image to be fixed, or do you want it to be scrolling? This one is fixed, so the way I'm scrolling is still remain the way it is. So I can decide to change this. I can decide to change this to scroll. And if I run this now, if I scroll this, see that the image goes with it. But if I put it on fixed, you see the magic now. Just hold on. So now we have fixed. Let me run it. So now while it's fixed, you can see that the image was fixed while we kept scrolling. So that is the essence of the background attachment. Okay. So we have the shorthand. Like I said, the shorthand is all what we've learned here: background color, background image, background repeat, background attachment, everything. You write everything all together. All these things like this. So instead of writing background color, background image, background repeat, background position, you just simply write background. And then you start giving your values: the background color, you bring in the background image, you bring in the background repeats, you bring in the background shorthand. But if you are not at an intermediate or expert level yet, just stick to writing it in this manner. It's the same thing. Okay, don't don't disturb yourself too much. So now let's move on to CSS borders. And yeah, CSS borders. So the CSS border properties allows you to specify the style, the width, and the color of an element border. All right, of an element border. So look at this now. I have borders on all sides. I have a red bottom border. I have a rounded border. I have a blue left border. These are examples of CSS borders. Okay, so we have the border style property. We specify what kind of border to display. We have the different border style properties. We have dotted, we have dashed, we have solid, we have double, groove, ridge, inset, outset, none, hidden, and the likes like that. So the border style properties can have from 1 to 4 values from the top border, the right border, the bottom border, and the left border. Okay. So look at these examples right here. We have P dotted, border style, dotted, P border style, dashed, solid, double groove, ridge, inset, outset, none, hidden, dotted, dash, solid blue. This is an example of a border style dotted. This is dashed, solid, double. We have the groove, we have the ridge, we have the inset, we have the outset, no border, hidden border, mixture. That's a mixture. Okay. So we have the border width also. So the border width properties specifies the width of the 4 elements. So the width can be set as specific size, that is in px, pt, cm, em, etc, or by using one of the 3 predefined values, that is thin, medium, or thick. We have this. Look at this right here. The demonstration of the different border widths. We have border style solid, then border with 5px. We have border style solid here. We have border with medium, and so that is what the border width does. In most cases, we get to write it all together. Okay, so yeah. So look at this example. So all these examples right here, these are the results. Border style solid, border with 5px, border style solid, border with medium, border style dotted, border with 2px, border style dotted, border with thick. These are the result of all this right here. Now we have specific side width. The border width property can have from 1 to 4 values. That is for the top border, the right border, the bottom border, we have the left border, because in understanding borders, you have to understand that we have top border, we have the bottom border, we have the left, and we have the right border. Okay, so look at this right here. The border width, we have 5px, 20px, which means that 5px is for the top and bottom, while 20px is for the left and the right. All right, we have 20px, 5px here, which means 20px is for the top and the bottom, and 5px is for the sides. We have 25px, 10px, 4px, 35px right here. So what we are saying here is that we have 25px for the top here, 10px for the right, 4px for the bottom, 35px for the left. Okay, it's that simple as that. So we have border color. All right, so you can also give your border color. You can use the normal color, or you can use the HEX, RGB, HSL value, whatever you want to give it. So you use the border color, you write it this way, border color, then whatever color you want to give to it. Okay, so you can also give different colors for each side. Okay, specific side colors. Here we have border color: red, green, blue, yellow. So red is for the top, green is for the right, blue is for the bottom, and yellow is for the left. Okay, that's what this means. You can use the HEX value, or you can use the RGB value, or the HSL value, whatever you want to use, or you can just simply just type the color you want. Then we have the border sides. All right, are you still with me, guys? Please let me know if you are with me in the comment section. Well, let me just move on. So we have the border sites. So the CSS border sites. So from example that we've displayed from the previous page, you can see that it's possible to specify a different border for each site. Yes. So in CSS, there are also properties for specific to specifying each of the borders. That is the top, the right, the bottom, and the left. Okay. So you can just say the border top style dotted, border right style solid, border bottom style dotted, border left style solid, and then you have your different side individual side styles. Okay. So it's that simple, or you can just write it this way. So it's that simple as ABC. Then we have the border shorthand. You know what the shorthand is, right? Now we have the rounded borders. We have the rounded borders. So the CSS rounded borders, that is the border radius property, is used to add rounded borders to an element. Okay. We have the normal border, we have the round border, we have the rounder border, we have the roundest border, right? And how do you do that? You use the border radius to define the rounded borders. 10px, 8px, right from 1px to 10px. You can just give your border, rounded border its value, okay, and then you're good to go. So CSS margin, all right, CSS margin. Margin is used to create space around elements outside of a defined borders. Okay, they are used to create space around elements outside of a defined border. So we have the CSS margin, which are used to create space around elements outside of a defined borders. And with CSS, you have full control over the margins. There are properties for setting the margins for each side of an element. You have the top, we have the right, we have the bottom, and we have the left. So margin individual sides. Oh shit, sorry. So we have margin top, we have margin right, we have margin bottom, we have margin left. So all the margin properties can have the following values. We have auto, that is the browser calculates the margin by itself. Then we have length. So you specify a margin in px, in pt, in cm, or wherever. Then we have the percentage. That means you can specify a margin in percentage of the width of the containing elements that you want. And we have inherit. That is this specifies that the margin should be inherited from the parent element. Okay. Look at this example here. This is margin top 100px, margin bottom 100px, margin right 150px, margin left 80px, then background color light blue. I can decide to just reduce this to 80. Sorry, 80px. If I run it, you see that it came up a little bit. I can decide to bring this to um to 80 as well. Let me just bring this to 70. Okay. I can decide to bring this back down to 130. You see, it expanded it a little bit. Then I can decide to add to this and make this 90px. Can you see that? So that is what the CSS margin does. Okay, then you have this shorthand property for that. All right. So so we have the margin shorthand property where to shorten the code, it's possible to specify all the margin properties in one property where you have the margin, then you give it your margin top, margin right, margin bottom, margin left properties all together in one code. Yes, possible. So we have the auto value. You can set the margin to auto. So you just write margin, then auto, margin, then auto, and the browser calculates the margin for you. All right. You have inherits. That is what this does is that the elements, the left, Here we have margin left 100 px, then we have margin left inherit. What happens here is that you see this example right here in the result, the left margin of the class that we picked here, elements, will be inherited from the parent element, that is the div. So let me show you this example. So look at this code right here. We have p class ex1, which is inside a div. All right. So we gave it border 1px solid red. That's why you have this red border here. Then we have margin left 100px. Okay. Now give it margin left inherit. So now it's going to adjust itself to the margin of this div element right here. So that's parent element. That's what they're trying to tell you here. So we have the margin collapse. Okay, we have the margin collapse. So we have top and bottom margins of elements, which are sometimes collapsed into a single margin that is equal to the largest of the two margins. And this does not happen on left and right margins. It only happens on the top and the bottom margin. So let's look at this example below. We have margin 50px, then 0. We have margin 20px, 000. In example above, they said the H1 element has a bottom margin of 50px and the H2 element has a top margin set to 20px. Okay, so that's that for CSS margin. So all right, so guys, I want us to practice what we've learned so far on HTML and CSS. Okay, so I want to give you an assignment. This time around, I would like us to provide feedback on your assignment. I want to be sure that you understand what we've been doing all this while. So the assignments I'm going to give you is you are going to create a table. All right, you're going to create a table and then you're going to style the table with CSS. You give it a background color of your choice. You give it a border of your choice. Then what else? The background color of your choice, the border of any border of your choice. Then you can style it the way you want. Just style it the way you want. Create a table that have ID, name, department, institution, course, CGPA. Yeah, so just create a table that has all that information. Then in the next class, before the next, okay, tomorrow we are going to continue with padding. We're going to talk about padding, probably height and width. We don't have much to cover on height and width. It's very easy to understand. Box model. I think we're going to do a model on box model. Yeah. Then probably talk about outline tomorrow also. All right. So I think that will be the end of our class for today. So if you want to, if you have questions, you can just ask your questions. Okay, please ask your questions if you have questions. Any questions? Okay. So in the absence of none, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for your time today, and see you tomorrow. Have a lovely night rest.